Welcome to Gapology Radio with your hosts Mark Tinas and Brian Brockhoff. This is your leadership development podcast where they share unique insights with the purpose of helping leaders achieve their greatest potential. You can learn more by reading their books, Gapology, IMBAR, and Speed of Purpose, or by participating in one of their workshops. All of this and more can be found on their website, gapology.org.
Hey everybody, welcome to Gapology Radio. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for the tremendous feedback on last week's episode on improving communication with Gapology. It was a super fun call with Judy and Sarah, and we'll definitely get them back on the show going forward as much as we can. So tonight we thought we'd address a topic that many leaders struggle with, especially those inexperienced leaders that Judy referred to last week. That is, how do you manage up? Meaning, how do you influence your boss? Oftentimes we see that our bosses struggle with providing the leadership that we need, but it can be tricky to give them feedback if they aren't asking for it. Well, we're going to share some tips and tactics using elements from Gapology. So let's go ahead and get the show rolling and give Mark Tinas a call. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Brian.
How you doing?
I'm good. Long
Good.
day, but I'm good.
Yeah, good. We had amazing feedback from last week's podcast.
I listened to it this afternoon and I learned so much. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's funny when you actually go through and listen to it afterward, you pick up so much more that you didn't even catch, doing the podcast. It's crazy.
I learned that you were actually quite funny. So I didn't really know that, but
Oh my
it was worth learning.
I need to listen to it again. Actually, I need to make Julianne listen to it.
It was good.
Yeah, I really liked it. So our topic tonight is managing up with Gapology. So I don't know, probably 3 weeks ago, I was talking to a leader and we were talking about leadership and she kept talking about leadership flowing down to her team and that type of thing. But she was struggling with how does she manage up, meaning how can she help to influence her boss? How can she help to coach her boss with ideas, providing feedback to her boss without him being offended or looking at her as a lower person and not really respecting what she's saying. So I thought that would be kind of an interesting topic because I think in reality, all winning leaders can really lead and influence in all directions, right? So either up, down, even sideways with peers. And I think we need to seek out ways to influence our peers to win, seek out ways to influence our team to win, but also look for those ways that we can influence our boss to win.
Oh, I love that. One of my favorite topics. Leadership does not flow down. Great leaders don't see org charts that are top down. Great leaders, regardless of your level, are sort of the center of a flower that flows outward. So picture a rose and picture a leader at any level flowing outward to the petals. So It's so different. It flows outward. And whoever's out there in those petals can be your boss. Leadership flows outward. Leadership affects everyone. The boss may learn more from a lower level leader than from their boss. So it's just not that way at all. It's not a top-down org chart. In fact, in the future, we're going to write that book that we've talked about, where we show these org charts that have the leader at the center flowing outward in a circular fashion. And that's the reality of org charts today, if you really think about it. But regardless of your level, it's not top down. If you're a great leader, it is not top down. In fact, it's great if you just ignore the org chart and lead.
Yeah.
Lead.
Yeah, I love that. And, it hit me just like a thunderbolt when you said a rose. So when you first said a flower, I immediately pictured like a daisy, right? So a clear center with clear spokes coming out from the center. But a rose isn't like that at all. One of the most beautiful flowers there is, right? So a rose,
Right.
petals are overlapping and wrapped around each other, and they're all kind of support each other. Wow, what a cool image. I love that.
I had a new leader ask me once, wow, what is your secret to success? And I thought about it for a minute. What would I tell this new leader? I said, my secret to success is to always get my boss promoted.
Mm.
And they thought about it for a minute and they laughed. And I said, no, seriously, if you as a leader are great enough to influence your boss and to make that boss always perform well and look good, because you have developed all these ideas that influence the entire team and the boss is always getting promoted, guess what happens to your career? And they said, well, I guess I maybe get promoted. And I said, yeah. So leadership is not top down, it's center out. It's so different.
Yeah. Just think the influence that you could have with a leader that especially is open to that. If you have good technique for doing that, they'll really come to rely on you and trust you.
Yeah. I mean, think about the boss. Are we going to wait for the boss's boss to influence the boss, or shall we?
Yeah.
Let's help the boss. Let's support the boss. The boss is not all knowing. I mean, I'm a boss. Believe me, I am not all knowing. My team knows a lot more than I do. I learn from them. So together, we win. But it's not about me. It's about them. So one of the things I used to say is never subordinate. And it's so true. If you just don't subordinate and you just lead, everybody wins, all directions, up, down, sideways, whatever. Help the peer group win, help the boss win, help your subordinates win, and we all win. So when you lead, we win. You don't lose.
Yeah. And just think if you're doing it from a perspective of your purpose. So in Speed of Purpose, we talk a lot about this, but so if you have the purpose at the center of your desire to influence the boss is going to tap into that. And just think of the influence that you can have just with that.
Yeah. And help the organization have a purpose, help the team have a purpose. It changes everything.
Yep.
At the end of the day, great leaders model a behavior. They model achieving results. They model sharing best methods back to the team. And they model a behavior that, again, equals everyone winning. Everybody wins. So it's not a competition. At the end of the day, we all win together. And if you help everyone around you win, it's certainly not a bad thing for you or your career. So picture again a rose and blossom outward.
Yeah, that great modeled behavior then flows to the next petal, regardless if that's upward or downward or sideways or whatever. What kind of tips do you think you could share with the group?
Well, I think helping close the knowledge gap with your boss is important. How do they like to communicate? That's important. So if the boss likes to communicate via email, then communicate via email. But don't assume they're all knowing. Fill them in, give them details, explain things to them as to why you made a decision and what that decision was. So align with their knowledge intake. And it's very helpful for you and the team. It doesn't mean that it's your knowledge intake, but it's their knowledge intake. So people absorb things in different ways. Align with theirs. Very important. Close the knowledge gaps that your boss has. And the boss will appreciate it. Trust me. I get my gaps filled every day by other people. And I appreciate it greatly. And I have a lot of gaps.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of those things that kind of goes both ways. And we talked about that a little bit on the last call is, own what you can own. So if you have a knowledge gap between you and your boss, get that closed. But if you're seeing that your boss has that gap with you, make sure that you're closing that. I think most leaders want to be recognized as a teacher, as a mentor, someone that they can help other people learn and grow. So I think if you create that role, even if they're not initiating that, but create that role with them, that they're the one that's helping to teach and mentor you, I think that establishes a level of trust that can really help increase your own talent, increase your communication with them, and overall close the knowledge gap with them.
Yeah, you don't want knowledge gaps with your boss.
Right.
So close them. It can be done.
Yep.
So then you move to the importance gap. So what's important to the boss? They probably know what's important to the organization. So it matters. So find out what's important to them and align that with expectations. Expectations should align perfectly to where what we're measuring, what we talk about are all in alignment with what's important. And then you narrow it down to 3 to 5 things. I currently visit communities, and one of the things I do on a visit is I try and narrow down the big things that need to be done, the important things that will make a difference, to the top 3. I try and get the team to focus on the top 3 things. And that works because it keeps it narrow, it keeps it fairly simple, and it aligns everyone around those 3. A few months from now, those 3 will change to something else. But for now, let's focus on these 3. Let's get these done. And that aligns the boss, that aligns the team, that aligns everyone who's impacting that. And it affects the results rather greatly.
Yeah, I love that number 3. I think most people can remember 3 things. When you're trying to train people, you give them 15 things, they're never going to remember that, but they'll remember 3. And, what people remember help to create the things that they'll actually do, right? You can measure that pretty easily.
If you're trying to close ultimately the action gap, if you're focused on 3, and they're a big 3, they're the right 3, it creates a tremendous alignment around that and creates action. A leader that gives people 100 things to do won't succeed. Doesn't work.
Right. And I think with the managing up piece, determining what your 3 things are that are the most important, determine that ahead of time. So when you go into those conversations, you can lay out what your 3 things that are your priorities, the 3 things that are the expectations that you set for yourself, but also set for like your team if you have a team, or at least 3 things that, you're going to really expect, have as an objective with your boss as well. And being able to speak to those things, being able to, really lay those things out can really make that boss then look at you and you're organized and focus on priorities and that kind of thing. I think that helps to develop some of that trust again.
Yeah, I think, that's a great point. I think trust is built by transparency. If you're humble and you are clear on the wins, but you're also clear on the opportunities, and you articulate that builds trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
That builds trust. It builds credibility.
Right.
And by having a plan, and by having from that plan then a series of accomplishments, that builds, again, credibility. Mm-hmm. And depending on the size of the organization, you can potentially impact other parts of the organization if you're very clear on things that worked, why they worked, and again, sharing those. One of the things we've done to create action in our group is we meet once a week with the total leadership team, and we share our results and what worked. The purpose of that is action, so that we can talk about what worked. Because if it worked in one location, it will likely work in many others. So the discussion around what worked and why it worked creates a tremendous amount of action and replicates a result that we want everywhere.
Yeah, I love that. I think too often all we do is focus on the things that don't work. where we missed, our failures, those types of things. When in reality, focusing on the things that actually work, I think that a lot of times will tell you more about what to replicate going forward to help continue to drive that momentum towards success. I think too often we forget that, and it's a critical part.
Yeah, it's big. So when I talk to leaders about how to be the best they can be, how to achieve their greatest success, I tell them to lead, period. Don't think about hierarchy, lead. Set the pace, model the behavior, always be humble, but share everything you can that works with others. Help them become the heroes. Don't assume that the boss knows everything. That's a big gap, by the way, where people subordinate and wait for the boss to come up with the idea. No, come up with the idea, develop it yourself, share it with the boss, help the boss move forward. Incredible movement comes from that. The boss may not know more than you do in given topics. So be supportive by developing the actions. Be the go-to. I love the go-to. Call Brian. He'll know what to do. Be that person, and get the boss promoted. Get the boss promoted. Think about that. Forget yourself. Get the boss promoted. I can't tell you. I'm trying to think of how many times you and I were able to replace the boss over the years, but it was probably half a dozen. Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It helps everybody. It helps many other people get promoted. And the sharing of wins is a big deal. The reason you share wins is for recognition, but it's also so that we all know what works. And when we're all aligned with what works and we begin replicating that behavior, it is of great significance to the overall organization. So if we don't share wins, we create a knowledge gap in what works. If we share wins, we close the knowledge gap, we close the importance gap, and we close the action gap, and we begin replicating what works. And within every organization, I've always been able to find what works. And that becomes a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting just thinking about so often when we focus only on what's not working, that just drives that negative momentum, right? It slows things down. Let's focus on the things that win, that we know work. And let's replicate that stuff.
Yeah, let's do it 100 times over.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what doesn't work is easy.
Right.
That's just a pity party.
Yeah. Right.
We don't need that.
Yeah.
We can move past that really quickly with what works and change everything. If you learn to not subordinate and you help the boss win, and you see the org chart as centered around leaders who influence everyone, I think the future is very bright and it's rosy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about a time that we taught Gapology to a group. And when we showed up, we didn't realize who the group was, right? We were thinking it was a group of leaders. And I remember standing up there and right away, we started introducing ourselves. And it was a group of, they're all individual contributors. So none of them are managers. And they were starting to question, why am I learning about Gapology? This is for winning leaders. And the conversation came back around to the fact that everyone's a leader. Everyone has the ability to be a leader. And thinking about that peer-to-peer leadership, that whole rose mentality where your pedal can influence all the other pedals around you. It just really was clear in my mind as you were describing this, that we really can be, if we forget about the hierarchy, forget about the org chart, and just lead, just focus on what we can do to lead. I think it'll definitely move the organization forward.
Well, you bring to mind another thing. So one year Gapology was hired by a very successful company to come spend the year with them and work with them for a year. And they were a very successful company. What you might not think is that they had a lot of gaps. One of my greatest achievements in my career is to know that today, 5 years later, that great company has more than doubled their business.
Yeah.
And Gapology played a significant role. They were so successful, but they were smart enough to know they had a bunch of gaps.
Mm-hmm.
And when we began closing those gaps, this very successful company became more and more and more successful. So don't get lost. Don't get arrogant. Stay humble. The gaps are there. Find them, close them sequentially, knowledge, then importance, then action. The boss has gaps too. Don't ever think they don't. They may have more than you, doesn't matter. Close them, work to close them, and we all win.
Yep, absolutely.
Great topic, Brian. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I thought this would be a good one. So hopefully everyone likes that. So
well done.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Mark. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, have a great week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
All right. That'll do it from here. For more information on Gapology, head on over to our website, gapology.org. Everyone have a fantastic week. We'll talk to you soon.
This has been a Gapology Institute production. Visit us at gapology.org.